Hey, what's up, DLLS Mavs Nation? Welcome to the Emergency Podcast as Dante Exum and the Dallas Mavericks agreed to a one-year deal for Exum to return to Dallas for this upcoming season. I'm your host, Kevin Gray, alongside Mavericks beat writer Tim Cato and Mavericks analyst Bobby Crillo. We appreciate you joining us here on DLLS Sports. Gentlemen, let's get into it. There's been a lot of talk about if the Mavericks are going to make another move after signing D'Angelo Russell. Dante Exum now, Bobby Crillo, is going to be back on a one-year deal for the Dallas Mavericks. What does this mean potentially for the roster, for Exum? A lot to get into, Bobby. Let's start with the player and Dante Exum coming back here.
Yeah, I'm happy that the Inferno is back, man. He throughout his career, obviously injuries have limited him, and last season he played in only, I think, like 20 or 25 games. But the year before that, 23-24, Kyrie missed a significant chunk of time early in the year because of a freak injury where Dwight Powell landed on top of him, and he was out like a month and a half. And, Luka missed quite a bit of time too, and Jaden Hardy didn't quite develop. And Dante was their third guard on that team and was incredible, for most of the season. He had that huge game where he hit 7 threes against the Lakers. Obviously, that big 3 to tie it at the buzzer against Houston toward the end of the regular season too. He was a 46% three-point shooter that season. And then last year, injuries kept him out of the mix, but it's a great deal. He's on the minimum. He is now probably their second or third best point of attack defender. He can definitely give them minutes as point guard or off guard, with or without Kyrie or next to D'Lo or Brandon Williams or whoever it is, plays off ball. Whenever he's feeling really good, his confidence is a big bolster, I think, to his game on offense as far as his willingness to drive, finish, pass, shoot, everything. So, hopefully he can return to his 23-24 form. But at the minimum, that's definitely a risk I'm willing to take. And like we talked about earlier today, the Mavs have had a pretty good offseason so far. They've had honestly a really good offseason in many respects, and this is another great deal for them.
In last season, it was 2 broken bones in his hands. I know he's an injury-prone player. Maybe the fact that he has just had so many injuries throughout his career, maybe he's likelier to break his hand. Like maybe that's true. Maybe that's the case with injury-prone players, is that literally any injury possible to an NBA player is more likely to happen to someone like Dante Exum. But come on, I mean, a broken hand, a broken finger. These are known as the most random NBA injuries possible. He didn't break them because he was going up for dunks and just like shattered his hand on the rim and suffered a nasty.
He got like crunched in a pit by a screen or something. Like it was just a random thing.
Yeah, these are the most random. So the point here is that his legs held up, his knees held up, his shoulders held up last season, and just the dumbest, most unlucky, most universally understood to be unlucky injury happened to him twice last year. So as far as injury goes, I mean, it's a bummer, and especially given his reputation, it's a bummer that last season went like it did. But I personally am more willing to write off last season and not view that as a concern going forward. And in this instance, just kind of hope that, for his sake and the, just appreciation for the way he plays, that, he is going to have a good stretch of luck and injury luck and health. I think it matters. I think he's an important player. I think he's a slightly different. I still don't, he's a point guard, but this is where we get into the weird terminologies with, he's a point guard, but he's not a lead creator. He's not someone you're going to put on the ball and have.
He can get people organized though, and get.
Yes.
I mean, he's probably their best entry pass maker on the team at this point.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and that's important. The more plus passers you can put on the court at any given time, the less it matters that you have a alpha heliocentric, like dominant, this is where most of our offense is coming from. It just helps mitigate that. It maybe doesn't, solve it entirely, but to the extent that Dante is going to be in the rotation, going to be on the court next season, I absolutely think him and his skill set helps.
Of course, Dante Exum last year missing significant time with a wrist injury, also had a broken hand as well, was able to make it back by the time we got to the end of the season to be able to get back on the floor. Surprisingly, was able to return from that broken hand shortly before the regular season ended. This does now put the Mavericks at 16 players on the roster, and the natural question being, is a roster move coming because Dante Exum is now back? That's something we've been discussing at length. If the Mavericks are going to make a move to bring Exum back, our very own Mark Stein had reported that Exum had wanted to remain in the NBA and had wanted to do so with the Dallas Mavericks, and they were able to do so and coming to this agreement. So what does this mean now for the roster? We've talked about Jaden Hardy. We've talked about Max Prosper. We've talked about individuals that if the Mavericks did bring Exum back, there could be a corresponding move, but that may not necessarily need to happen immediately because of some interesting rules as it comes to the NBA and rosters. And obviously, these contracts can't be finalized until July 6th. So let's start there. What does this mean now for the roster and what that means as far as they're now having 16 guys with Exum being back in the fold here?
I'll answer that. One quick sidebar. I feel like this has been on the tip of my tongue a couple times in the past week on shows, and then the conversation just went somewhere else. I've talked to Dante, and I've talked to him about his time in Europe. And what he would tell me is that he went to Europe always with the plan to come back to the NBA. So it's no surprise to me that this is still somebody who has his sights focused on carving out an NBA role. And he did that a couple years ago. He absolutely did that, no matter the disappointing postseason he had. And I think he's going to have the chance to do that again. When it comes to the roster and how that's going to play out, yes, Dallas is going to have to make a trade at some point. I believe because he would put them over the second apron, it's not just that there's 16 players guaranteed under contract. You can go into the season with 16 players under contract, but because Dallas is operating underneath the second apron, they can't go sign every single person. They may not send out a press release for Dante Exum until this corresponding move takes place to clear up the roster. But the reason it doesn't have to happen imminently is one, that you can just wait to make the signing. And two, here's how it sometimes works. I don't know what the specifics are inside the Mavs organization, but over the years, talking to people in the front office, talking about just the micro minutia of how front offices work, it very well could be that Dallas has agreed to a trade with another team for Max that includes, say, their second round pick. And this team that they've agreed to the trade with knows that they're not going to make more moves this offseason, or at least they're not going to make more moves that would invalidate the Mavericks' ability to make that trade with them. And that team says, yes, if at any point you want to do that deal, we would love to take a salary and the second round pick with it. It could be Max, could be Jaden Hardy, could be anyone. Dallas could be in a situation where they say, handshake agreement, yes, but we're going to keep shopping. We're going to keep seeing if there's any other scenarios, because these are small things. These are not things that hinge on an entire offseason. It's just one front office saying, hey, we might have a chance to, do somebody a favor and grab a second round pick. Whereas Dallas could be in a situation, I saw Brad Townsend on Twitter already speculate about this. Dallas could be in a situation where they've had a couple teams say, we might be interested in Dwight Powell. Our center room's not fully played out. It's not planned out. We're still figuring out who our starter is going to be. Who our starter is going to be depends on who our backup is going to be. Who our backup is depends on who the third backup is going to be. It could be a situation where there's teams like, okay, once we figure this out, once that gets settled, we'll come back to you if we're still interested in a Dwight Powell. And maybe that's a situation where they're interested in Dwight Powell just to take him into space, just to take him for, a little bit of cash back to Dallas, since both teams have to send something both ways. Maybe it would be one of those classic, the rights to a European player that hasn't been, that maybe has been retired for 5 years. Dallas did one of those trades last year, I believe, in the second round. Kopanen was like the rights to a player. So it could, I'm speculating. It does sound very clear. All indications are there's not an immediate move coming. There will be a move coming. There may even be a signing or two delayed, most likely Exum's, before that happens. But that's kind of just inside basketball in this case, at how this sometimes works. It's not that they're signing Exum and just, oh man, I sure hope the trade comes along that is going to make this legal. It's that they may already have one lined up, but they think they could do better. They think they want things to play out. Maybe they have something bigger in the works that would make this very easy, as we speculated a little bit earlier today on the show. Maybe there is a huge LeBron thing, that
relax,
1%
Kato,
chance,
relax.
2% chance.
Don't gas
possible.
Corella up right now.
It's,
Don't do it.
To do Two Angry Men's voice, it's possible.
Yeah, think back to it was just last season. Like one of the first things that we saw was that the Mavs had agreed to this deal to send Tim to Detroit, Tim Hardaway Jr. to Detroit for Quentin Grimes, and then I think that ended up becoming like a 14-team trade, which also sent Clay here, and there was stuff going to Charlotte, and Reggie Jackson, I think, was involved in that somehow. Like, it just became this mega Uber trade. And in the Mavs case, because they only have to clear one guy and a couple $1 million, they could easily just hop into some random team's trade where you add in $2 or $3 million and the money still works, and you just give a team a second-round pick as like a little tip. So, yeah, they almost certainly have something lined up. Essentially, any player that they would be sending out would be – I mean, we presume it's going to be either Omax, which is what Mark Stein has said, or Dwight Powell, or maybe Jaden Hardy, but he's got substantial money and years on his deal. But, like, Omax basically makes the minimum. Dwight makes a tick over the minimum, so it wouldn't be that big of a deal to find someone to be a partner with. But it very well could be that they're working on some 3-for-2 trade with someone that we haven't even thought about. And, they won't even have to clear a roster spot, but we'll see.
Yeah, that was my simple explanation. It's almost certainly not almost certainly, but it very easily could be a much more complex deal in the works, or maybe not even in the works. But I guarantee you that Dallas has at least like an immediate simple solution lined up for the roster crunch, even if there are other workarounds that may present itself, maybe being worked on, may not end up being anything, and they'll revert back to the quick solution at some point when it's time.
Bobby Marks laying out that Dallas was a projected $1.6 million below the second apron before Dante Exum. A corresponding move will be needed to trim some salary. Exum's cap hit will be $2.3 million this upcoming season, just to put some numbers behind that as far as the Mavericks are concerned from a keeping of the books standpoint, if you will.
And that's the veterans minimum, just to be clear.
So
he will actually make more than that, but his cap hit will be 2.3 because he's on a veterans minimum.
So Dante Exum back on a 1-year deal with the Dallas Mavericks. We will see.
How do you feel about it, Kevin?
Competent ball handler, someone who can organize, someone who defensively can give you some punch and some length, and also be able to be trusted with the ball in his hand. So, I mean, initially you were going into a season with D'Angelo Russell and Brandon Williams as your quote-unquote lead point guards. The lack of depth in terms of ball handling that this team had was quite concerning. Now you bring Dante Exum into the fold. Not only is someone you trust, but someone who can actually play both ways as well, and you feel good about. So we talk about all the time how the minutes are going to be distributed, and here comes another player who has been trusted by this team to handle the ball when he's been healthy to play, a good enough for a three-point shooter now where you can feel credible about leaving him out there to provide you a little extra punch and gravy on offense, especially from the three-point line. So good piece of business by the Mavericks once again to shore up their backcourt until Kyrie Irving is concerned, because all these moves, whether it be D'Angelo Russell, now Dante Exum, this is all to ensure that you've got enough in the cupboard until Kyrie Irving comes back to be able to help you out from a point guard standpoint. So I'm happy for Exum that he's back here. He's been a guy that's played through injury, but he's also played well at times. So, and as Yes1260 says, he can play. He can play. So I'm glad that Dante Exum finds himself back, but he has some guard depth, and that's good for Dallas. So there will be a lot more on this when it comes to the Dallas Mavericks. Dante Exum coming back. What does that corresponding move potentially look like going forward? We'll be all over it here on the DLLS Mavs podcast. If there's something else emergency we got to talk about, we'll hop right back in here to take care of you here when it comes to everything for the Dallas Mavericks. Appreciate all of you hanging out with us here on the DLLS Mavs emergency pod. Dante Exum back on a 1-year deal with the Dallas Mavericks. That is our Mavericks analyst, Bobby Curl. That's our Mavericks beat writer, Tim Cato. I'm your host, Kevin Gray. We are DLLS Mavs. We'll talk to you tomorrow or maybe later on today on the DLLS Mavs podcast. Y'all be good. We'll talk to you later. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.